Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are getting up and feeling well out there and having a great start to your day. A great week out there so far. Got you a pretty big update on what's going to happen weather-wise potentially for today. We got severe weather to talk about, a damaging wind threat, a small tornado risk, hail risk, and we'll talk about how hot it could potentially get in certain portions of the country today. I'm really watching the Southwest, the South Central U.S., as far north as Kansas, south as Texas, as far west as Death Valley, which will break some records here in the next few days. Today it will get quite hot in those regions, but as we work our way throughout the next several days, it will get even hotter, where we will flirt with all-time records, which I believe the all-time record in Death Valley is 134 degrees. I think as of now, it's not forecasted to get that high, but it potentially can. We'll see what happens, but we'll break it down for today. We'll get you some good information. As you can tell, there's a lot of tasks pulled up, so you know it's going to be a long one. But we'll break it all down. We're really focusing on that severe weather threat area, which is places like Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, even up to southern Wisconsin, Indiana. We'll break it all down for you folks. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. You guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over? As always, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. I've not had a chance to answer the comments from last night's video. Just woke up a little bit late this morning, so running a little bit behind, but I will answer them probably sometime later this morning, and then I'll answer all the comments from this video. So let's get rolling this morning. Let's take a look at water vapor loop. And we got two areas really to watch. We do have a new area kind of developing here in the panhandle of Oklahoma, but we have some flooding concerns ongoing right now in southern Arkansas, even portions of extreme northern Louisiana, where we have a pretty nasty line of storms that is developed and just kind of floating over the same regions right here. And it's dumping a lot of rain. For you, any viewers in southern Arkansas, you guys know it. You're probably experiencing it right now. So this is definitely a big weather thing ongoing right now this morning. If we look up here in the Midwest, we have a huge area of storms that is severe warned. That is pretty much blasting through the entire Midwest and will continue to do so. We'll make it all the way eventually into like southern Michigan a little bit later today, where we'll see if it really remains intact. This area of storms definitely has a player on what happens later this afternoon, this evening, even into the overnight hours. And we'll kind of discuss that as we get to this portion of the country. But this is definitely a big area of storms. In fact, you look on radar and what it looks like, and this is it. You got severe thunderstorm warnings up for 4 different areas. And this thing is blasting through very quickly, producing probably as high as 65, 75, maybe 80 mile per hour winds. So please be aware over the next couple hours if you're in higher populated areas like Des Moines up to Ames. This is pretty much going to move through almost the entire state of Iowa. Now, certain areas won't be as intense as other areas, but you're going to experience this, and we'll see how far southeast this stronger area of storms right here on the southern end blasts through. Does it remain intact? A lot of model guidance shows this kind of continuing to dip a little bit southeast, but then eventually making its way more so west to east, and eventually making its way into this area later today. But there is a lot of showers and downpours, even some storms kind of in between this and then this area that will eventually march to later today. You know, waking up to some rain in Chicago, northern Illinois. You're even dealing with pretty much, I guess you would say, an appetizer storm ahead of the big area of storms like in Des Moines, Ames, as I speak right now. So already dealing with it. You're dealing with some showers, some downpours over here in the northwest corner, like around Erie of PA, even extreme southwest New York State. And then this is that flooding concern I'm talking about. Hopefully it'll come up on your screen. This area of storms is not really moving much. In fact, this area is kind of moving northeast. This area is moving just south. So you have flash flood warnings ongoing. This is for, areas like, south of Little Rock, like El Dorado, not quite as far west as like Texarkana or anything like that. But I know that, cross it, you guys, Warren, probably just south, Magnolia, you guys are getting a lot of rain this morning. This is really hitting those extreme southern counties of Arkansas. Elsewhere, not a whole lot going on. There is a little area of storms. This was severe warned about an hour ago. here in the upper portion of the Panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma. But the Storm Prediction Center for today, we have a slight risk for a pretty broad area. There's not enough confidence to put an enhanced risk, which is a level 3 out of 5. We have just a large level 2 out of 5. This does include Des Moines, Kansas City, St. Louis, up to Peoria, Springfield, Illinois, and Springfield, Missouri. Not quite up to Chicago, but I am watching, remember that morning, what's going on right now that's moving into Iowa that'll eventually sweep across this entire region right here. And then we'll watch the Northeast. We'll just have pop-up storms that will develop along the interior Northeast. Let's hope that it doesn't hit some of these towns that, you know, potentially probably still have standing water in them right now. Let's hope that they avoid them, but there is a chance for some storms, and we know a storm in the summertime can dump a half inch to an inch of rain on you in a matter of like 30-45 minutes. So let's be aware of that. Elsewhere, pop-up showers and storms, but there is a tornado risk with this. There's a 2% risk. We'll talk about some areas that I think have the best chance to see a spin up today. So we'll watch this. It's a 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. Then we have the yellow area, which is a 15% risk of winds exceeding 50 knots or higher. That's 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then you got the hatch risk, which this could tweak throughout the day. I wouldn't be surprised if it does as confidence increases where they think the area of storms will develop. But as of now, you do have the hatch risk, which is the black outline region, which is a 10% risk of significant winds, which is winds pushing 75 miles per hour or higher, which is those hurricane force winds. You need to be careful with these. Kansas City is a big city to watch. There's a chance Kansas City won't get a drop of rain, but there will be supercells around the city of Kansas City. So please be aware of this. And so you got the damaging wind threat that does include Kansas City down to Columbia, Missouri, almost to St. Louis regions. Hail threat right over Kansas City. I know I done said Kansas City about 10 times in the last minute, but here we go. We have a significant chance of hail. Not just a chance, just a 15% chance, which is in the yellow area. That's a 15% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. You also have the 10% risk on its own to see significant hail, which is large hail, which is hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. So this is right over the highly populated area of the city of Kansas City, so and surrounding towns and communities. And this is basically where they think some supercells could get going. This is a conditional environment. We'll talk about that here in a second also, which means you'll have a lot of ingredients, but there'll be a cap in place. So storms will struggle to get going, but if they do, they could be an all hazards kind of deal. Tornado threat, you know, strong wind threat, and a hail threat with this today. You look at excessive rainfall outlook, we do have that moderate risk for what's ongoing right now. So that's, we already have flash flooding ongoing. I can tell you the percent chance all day until the cows come home, but there's actually, you know, flash flooding ongoing right now. There's that 40% risk of, you know, flash flood guidance being exceeded. You got to watch this region up here. We'll talk about potentially, we'll talk about the rainfall forecast from the National Weather Service up here in like northern Illinois, down southern Michigan, even northern sections of Indiana, where I do think this area of storms that we're seeing in Iowa right now could dump a lot of heavy rain over areas like Chicago, maybe as far east as Detroit and everybody in between. And then we'll watch just for this little area right here, which we'll watch for an area of storms that will develop later tonight. And I think southern Missouri, maybe even as far east as Kentucky, it's going to dump a lot of rain. So watches, warnings, advisories, alerts, excessive heat warnings in this darker pink or purplish color right here. This covers up a lot of the state of Oklahoma, higher populated areas like Oklahoma City, Tulsa, down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas, all the way down to Houston, all the way down to Corpus Christi. Very hot in Texas today, combined with the high humidity, which gets higher the further east you work in Texas. Yeah, it's just going to be another hot day today. Heat advisories up for all of southern areas of Louisiana. Heat advisories even up for the central panhandle of Florida. And again, another day of high humidity and high heat down here in the Miami region of southern sections of Florida. Excessive heat warnings up for pretty much all the desert Southwest. It's going to be extremely hot. If you're wondering what the burgundy color is, or red color here, that is excessive heat watches. So we're waiting to see if these get upgraded. You got those around the Memphis area too. And very hot in the southwest. We knew this was coming. We talked about it last night. We'll talk about it again somewhat in this video. The National Hurricane Center update, not a whole lot to speak on with this. You still got that 50% risk of development to a tropical depression or storm, which would be done within the next 7 days. And in fact, you look at the next 2 days, and you even got a 40% chance of this. So there's still a chance this could develop, but it's not going to bother anybody except the fish out here in the North Atlantic Ocean. So not a whole lot to speak on. I am watching here in the next 8 to 10 days something that could get developed off the coast of North Africa, but we'll speak on that when it warrants to be spoke on. The Southeast today, won't stay on this very long because in general the Southeast will be pretty chill today, honestly, even Florida. But we keep this going, and we'll watch what happens with this area of showers and storms in southern Arkansas and northern Louisiana. Does kind of the energy kind of scoot to the east, eventually get into Mississippi, give you guys some storms? It's possible. Meridian down to Jackson, some storms are possible this afternoon. And then some standard just pop-up downpours and storms are possible along the Gulf coastline. And we'll go on and get a little bit closer. I can tell you like the Carolinas, Tennessee, Virginia up here, I think the only thing you're going to see is maybe a pop-up storm or two. It's quite possible. I would say there's a higher chance of that today rather than yesterday. So don't be surprised if you just happen to be the only area in the state of South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia that gets a pop-up storm. It happens sometimes, even when there's like only a 10 to 20% chance of showers and storms. Sometimes you just never know. It just pops up right on top of you. But we look at what's going on in southern Arkansas. We already talked about that. This will eventually try to drift into Mississippi. This area of showers and storms could most certainly be further south, down closer to Jackson, all the way down to the Gulf coastline. But we will watch some energy that will fly into Mississippi. There's a marginal risk for severe storms into this region. So some of these could pack a punch later this afternoon. I would say the biggest threat with these is maybe just some gusty winds. No real tornado threat with this, so don't worry about that. Hail threat will not be that high with this, with such a tropical air mass. But some downpours are possible anywhere from New Orleans, the Gulfport, the Mobile, to the western panhandle of Florida. And you definitely need to watch out for these, but this is just standard summer stuff. Nothing to be scared about or anything like that. Even in Mississippi, where you have the marginal risk, don't worry too much. Just standard summer flow out there. This eventually, as we work our way into the evening, could drift its way into western Alabama, Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, point south, maybe all the way down to Montgomery. You guys could see some downpours there, quite possible into the evening. And we still might be dealing with this a little bit later. But outside of that, we'll watch what enters maybe northern Arkansas tomorrow morning. We'll speak on that here in a second. The Northeast, guys, what we will watch for is pretty much some pop-up strong to severe storms. They are very possible. Northern PA, the southern tier, like Binghamton, the Finger Lakes region, you guys could see some pop-up, very isolated, strong to severe storms that is basically in this entire corridor right into here. And they will fly through, develop, and then by the time you work your way into Thursday morning, they're done. Okay, what's wild is this little area of rain you see here. Well, it's not little, it's pretty large. That is what's actually in Iowa right now. So it'll make the full track, it looks like. So let's zoom into each individual region. And let me get my maps right here so I can mention a couple small towns, communities like we like to do here. And we'll get this in motion. Some storms could develop as early as around lunchtime and maybe extreme eastern areas of Ohio, Akron, Canton, Youngstown. You guys could see some big storms there, quite possible early in the afternoon if it happens. And then by the time you get 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, anywhere basically in the northern counties of Pennsylvania. Could certainly, pretty much everybody has an equal chance to see some stronger storms. The Warren area, Corey, Jamestown, New York. You guys could certainly see some stronger storms. It's possible. You make your way closer to Binghamton, any kind of towns and communities in this region. And throughout the entire afternoon, around 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock onward, I would say all the way till about late evening, you guys have a chance to see some storms roll through. In this entire region, I would definitely specifically say right here. You move a little bit further northeast, look more so at New York, and same kind of deal, guys. Like I said, you watch these storms right here. But, you look at some storms right here in southern Vermont, which is where we do not need the rain. Could have a strong storm or two that develops around 3 to 5 p.m. Western Mass, the Berkshires, watch out for some storms. that could make its way through. Some of these storms could make it across Massachusetts and flirt with the Boston area, southern Vermont later this afternoon. And you got some pretty big storms going over the Catskills. So, you know, if you're hanging out in that region, the mountainous regions, camping, whatever you may be doing, you know, Middletown points north, basically between Albany, Middletown, all the way up to Binghamton, sometime around 4 or 5, you know, I would say 5 to 7 p.m. Watch out for some storms that could fly through the region. You know, some of these will be severe. I can almost guarantee it. We get up to Maine, same kind of deal, guys. Right here in central Maine, 5, 6 p.m. Some, you know, storms develop here and last throughout the evening. And then by the time you get after midnight, they're pretty much done. So pretty much in the entire interior Northeast especially, be aware of some strong to severe storms today. South central U.S., really the big story is heat. Not really a whole lot to speak on with the weather, to be honest with you guys, except what's going on in Arkansas and northern Louisiana right now. We could get some showers that drift into western Texas. You're going to be wanting and begging for them most likely. And New Mexico, some scattered rain showers, even a storm, some downpours are possible. But consider yourself lucky if you get them, because it's going to be very hot in these regions. And we'll go up here and talk about Kansas, which will be the only area which we consider, I guess, the South Central U.S. panel here on the channel. We'll talk about them here in a second. So we'll watch Eastern Kansas for some supercells that really get going, and we'll focus in on that here in a second. But everybody else, pretty chill. Like I said, we'll talk about Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas here in a second. We got a separate little section for that region. Everybody else pretty calm. The big story here is heat, extreme heat. I would say 85-90% of Texas gets above 100 today, and I would say a large percentage of Texas gets over 105 degrees today. Oklahoma, very hot, upper 90s to low 100s. You start to get in the southwest Oklahoma, it's well into the 100s as early as lunchtime today, and widespread mid to upper 90s in Kansas. Big time heating. If we do get any storms that do explode here in eastern areas of Kansas and Missouri, they will have maxed out thermodynamics to deal with, very high temperatures, and these storms could be quite explosive. Not as hot technically in Louisiana, just mid-90s, but let me tell you that the heat index will be even hotter. That will be very hot in that region. Maybe not hotter necessarily, but extremely hot. You know, we take it to about 3-4 p.m. This is the heat indices, and always a tricky word to say in this region, what the heat index will be. And obviously you can tell the heat index is actually lower than the air temperature in western Texas. That's because you don't deal with humidity most of the time in western Texas unless you have a dry line that's surging pretty far back west. But the humidity levels will make the heat index much higher into this region. The only reason you have this little weird area of cooler temperatures right in here in southern Arkansas and northern Louisiana is because you're dealing with the morning rain that could really create some kind of cloud cover or rain-cooled air in this region today. But once you get out the influence of that rain-cooled air, you start to get into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Houston. The heat index will be well over 110 degrees today. That's why you have the excessive heat warnings. Very, very uncomfortable conditions. But this really isn't anything new for you guys. It's hard for me to, tell you guys, that you're used to it because I'm not you guys. But it's just been a relentless summer out here. So let's talk about Kansas. And we'll break down each state. We'll break it down for you folks. Quiet all the way through, about 6, 7 p.m. Not a whole lot going on. Then we get to about 8 p.m. Remember, this is in Eastern time, so back this up 1 hour. So technically, this is 8 p.m. Central time. You got 1 or 2 supercells. They might not necessarily be supercells right at the dot, but you got some forming just north of Topeka, Kansas, and Lawrence, Kansas, and then they develop and they begin to inch eastward. So, this is at this point, northwest of Kansas City. But I'm telling you, even though these look very small on your screen, these could be very powerful storms. And this is late. This is after the sun's setting. It's around 9 p.m. There's probably just a little bit of a glow left in the sky. You're starting to deal with nighttime. So that makes it a little bit more dangerous, right? So these storms will flirt with Kansas City. Get a little bit closer. Look how this one has that little hook to it. This is around the, just around the Lawrence, Kansas area. And then these drift into the Kansas City region. I mean, you're getting close to midnight at this point. So Kansas City, I know you guys are, you got the slight risk, and you're thinking, well, you get through the afternoon, the evening, nothing's happened. You're thinking, well, They messed up the forecast. That's not where I think it's going to get bad for you guys. It could get bad for you folks later tonight. So please be aware of this. And then these continue. You get to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then, it gets very active south of Kansas City potentially. You start to get to any kind of small towns down here. You start to even get down here to like Joplin, Missouri, places like that. But, I would say once you get south of Kansas City, this is something that's probably going to happen into the wee hours of the morning. You look at the updraft velocity swath in this region, and dang, okay, I got my panels mixed up. I do apologize. Here we go. We're good now. The updraft velocity swath that really likes some of these storms, they will be rotating. You will definitely have some rotating thunderstorms, and I think you'll get a couple tornado warnings somewhere in extreme eastern areas of Kansas and western areas of Missouri later tonight. And that's concerning because it's nighttime. Most people might be going to bed, whatever they may be doing. But, the more vibrant colors, that's where this run of the HRRR model is indicating more of rotating thunderstorms. So please be aware of this later tonight. Don't just get throughout the afternoon and evening and think that the threat just never materialized. It could later tonight in Kansas. We look it up here in Iowa next. And we're watching what's happening now. Remember, the HRRR model is doing a pretty decent job at picking up on this intense line of storms. This will continue to sweep through. Right now, as of, I guess it would be around 6 a.m. Central Time. This is where the storms are right now. So let's see how the timing is doing up here. And a lot of times with these complex storms, this little area storms, the timing is always behind. So this thing is already fully getting into Iowa. If you go up to the panel I was just at, this is where it's saying it's going to be around 7 a.m. But really, this is already where it is. So I would say the HRRR model is about an hour and a half behind schedule. But I've seen it do a lot worse. The structure of the storm is actually very similar. It's doing pretty well this morning. So, if you're in western Iowa, a lot of, smaller communities out here, Atlantic, Red Oak, what is that? Shenandoah, Creston, Red Oak, I think I already said that, Harlan. These storms are knocking on your doorstep right now. These will continue to blast across the Interstate 80 into these regions, and we have to see what they would look like around 9, 10 a.m., but this will be right over the Des Moines, Ames region, and this will continue to make its way closer to Waterloo. How does the northern area of this storm materialize? We're not quite sure. What we do know is the southern end is more intense than the northern end, but all of it's severe warned as we speak right now. These will these will begin to cross like Interstate 35 and continue to cruise along Interstate 80, and then I think by the time we get into closer to the late morning hours around lunchtime, these will really begin to affect the higher populated areas of kind of like eastern areas of Iowa, like, Davenport, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, I think that's how you pronounce it, Waterloo. These will knock on the doorstep of you folks, I would say, closer to lunchtime today, but it could be more so early. Could be more so like the late morning, 10, 11 a.m. time frame. So basically, if you're not dealing with storms in Iowa right now, you're going to end up dealing with some kind of form of heavy rain and storms throughout the morning and early afternoon hours. And then what happens after that? It's a big question. Maybe nothing. We'll see if any more storms develop, but really the big story in Iowa, what's going to happen this morning into the early afternoon hours. We look at these winds, and some areas are obviously getting very strong winds as I speak, but the HRRR model likes the strongest winds really surging through southern areas of Iowa. So if you're in these towns in southern Iowa, I would include Des Moines also, any towns, communities in southern Iowa, this is just the swath of winds that are possible, anywhere from 40 to 60 mile per hour winds or higher in certain isolated regions are possible to likely with these storms. So please be aware, if you're ahead of these storms and you know they're coming, fasten anything, prepare for them. Don't be out on the roads. Stop somewhere because they're going to be quite intense. They're moving in right now. If we look at the upper Midwest, I really want to focus in on like southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, northern Indiana, and southern Michigan. This area, storms will continue to march through. So, even though you got kind of just a marginal risk up here in northern Illinois, as you make your way, I would say, into the early afternoon hours, these begin to knock on the doorstep of let's say, you know, like I said, Cedar Rapids, they get closer to Rockford in northern Illinois, Madison, Janesville. They will eventually even get into the Milwaukee area. Now, will these be severe warned? We're not quite sure. 1 to 2 p.m., I can say this is still going to probably be some very heavy rain. This could be a little bit further south, but I think regardless, a lot of southern Wisconsin could get a good little bit of rain out of this. But as we make our way to 3, 4, 5 p.m., it could be a little earlier, 2 to 3 p.m. Some storms could make its way through Chicago, Milwaukee. Could get some light rain as far north as areas of Green Bay. I think you might could get some rain up there in the UP of Michigan, but I think most of it will be to your south. This will begin to cross Lake Michigan. You could get some backside, more storms into the evening time frame from Chicago to Milwaukee. It's quite possible. And then this enters the Michigan area. I would say central to southern Michigan has a good chance to see some showers and definitely some storms the further south you get. I mean, this storm looks quite intense in far southern areas of Michigan, so be aware of this. You know, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, Lansing, Ann Arbor, South Bend, Indiana, some storms are possible. You know, definitely watch out extreme northern Indiana. Even though the storms don't show much in this region, if you're in the northern counties of Indiana, some storms are certainly possible. Even northwest Ohio. And then by the time you're around 9, 10 p.m., I think you're dealing with just a very rainy Wednesday night for most of the state of Michigan outside the UP of Michigan. And the further south you get, the heavier the rain gets, the more chances for actual storms. Detroit could be some stormy weather. So definitely be expecting this later this afternoon into this evening for Michigan. How much rain could fall from this? And, well, let's talk about the wind speeds first. With this area of storms, I mean, you could get some gusty winds, anywhere from 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts with these storms. It shows an area of more intense winds in southern Michigan later this afternoon, maybe where these storms can get re-going again. And you got some wind gusts in certain areas gusting near 50 miles per hour. So with these storms today, definitely some gusty winds, maybe some damaging winds in this corridor from extreme southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, you know, maybe even extreme northern areas of Indiana. Especially watch out, you know, in southern sections, southern half of Michigan for some gusty storms later today for sure. Rainfall from this, there's going to be this corridor of 1, maybe as much as 2 inches of rain that could fall. I think Chicago will get a quick inch of rain later today, maybe as far north is, you know, Janesville, Madison, Milwaukee. There will be a tight cutoff of this rain somewhere up the western coastline of Lake Michigan, and then a lot of rain can fall in the southern half of Michigan, anywhere from 1 to 1.5 inches of rain in these regions right into here. So we make our way into the big question area: Missouri, Illinois, western Kentucky, even northern Arkansas. So it's a big, weird area to figure out. We'll compare 2 different models, the HRRR model and the FV3 model, and we take this through. What does this area of storms do in northern Missouri later this morning? I think that, you know, it's very close to northern Missouri right now, right? I mean, they're going to be into the northern sections of Missouri by the time that some of you watch. But by the time this video uploads around 8 a.m., these storms will probably be in the northwest corner of Missouri. So this will kind of be old news, but it's trying to figure out, you know, that first part, right? Will there be some intense storms in northern Missouri later this morning, early this afternoon? We already talked about northern Illinois. And then we get into this afternoon, there's not a whole lot going on based off the HRRR model. There's this weird lull. It's not weird. I mean, it makes sense. You got this outflow that's going to be kind of rain-cooled air, probably stabilizes a lot of the atmosphere up here. And then some cape begins to build up into probably southern sections of Missouri, and then southward, and then probably southwestward. And then, you know, we're getting into around 8, 9, 10, 11 p.m. We could have a stronger storm in and around the St. Louis region. It's quite possible, right around 9, 10 p.m. You know, and then we watch these supercells that we've already talked about for Kansas. They could begin to march into areas of western Missouri. At this point, it's around midnight. We got just some scattered convection. And granted, this is right in the middle of the slight risk. And you're thinking, well, why are we in the slight risk where we're not getting much? Well, I think if anything's going to happen, it'll probably happen later tonight, deeper into Missouri. You know, and then we get to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and we just got a lot of storm activity. Some of these could be producing heavy rain, damaging winds, and very large hail. It's very possible, especially earlier, especially later this afternoon into this evening. and more so western Missouri, eastern Kansas. But you stop it here, it's around 1, 2 a.m. Some storms in and around the St. Louis area, Columbia, Jefferson City, Missouri regions. And then what we watch for as we're waking up tomorrow morning is some nasty storms that will be ongoing potentially in southern Missouri. And then maybe in the southern areas of Illinois. I'm talking like 4 or 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. This could be surging down Interstate 55. It's quite possible. Definitely be careful. Any of these areas tomorrow morning, if you work a job where you have to get up really early, if you're in southern Missouri, southern Illinois, if I call Illinois Indiana, I do apologize. It happens sometimes. But these storms will surge through, and then I think we're going to be waking up to some severe storms in this region. They could be as far east as western Kentucky, maybe even western Tennessee, maybe all the way down here to the Boot Hill, Missouri. They're tough storms to figure out. And you look at the FV3 model, it is a little different. Not with this first area of storms. It likes the idea of it being about the same as the HRRR model. But you get into this afternoon, it shows some more storm development right here where Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa meet, right here in that little corner. And then it likes some robust thunderstorm development later this evening, 6, 7 p.m. north of St. Louis. Up here, the Quincy region. It likes some powerful storms. This model does. The HRRR model doesn't really have anything in this region. It does show some storms kind of a few hours later in the St. Louis region, but this is something totally different. This is why I'm showing you both models. But I can tell you, both models like a pretty powerful storm around the St. Louis area, around that 8 to 10 p.m. range. So I'd watch out St. Louis around that time frame. These two models agree with that. We'll see if that materializes. If it's so, if it does, damaging winds, large hail, even that isolated tornado threat. But then we get it to about 10, 11 p.m. I mean, look at these big-time storms. We're making its way through Missouri, southern sections of Illinois. But, remember, hey, this is happening several hours earlier than the HRRR model is. Okay, and this continues to surge through. And it looks very active all throughout the night tonight. Well, after midnight, you got a lot of storm action in central and southern Missouri. And this could surge all the way into northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, Springfield, the Ozarks of northern Arkansas. So you could be waking up to a nasty complex of storms tomorrow morning. So there are some differences with these two models. So I hope that helps. That was probably everywhere. But, I would watch, I don't have my cursor up, but I would watch this entire area for a big, large hail threat, a big damaging wind threat, especially into this region later today, really later tonight. Okay, so it's a tough forecast. Just heed warnings, and we're going to try to keep you guys prepared as much as possible. And really what you look at is the ingredients here. And you can tell the atmosphere here is really stabilized from this morning and afternoon convection up here in Iowa and Missouri. But then some CAPE really builds in later tonight. You got CAPE values from that 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram mixed layer CAPE all the way up to 3,500. So some big time fuel builds in. But this could very well be all the way up to here. I think you'll have a lot higher CAPE levels up into the St. Louis region than what this is showing. But, so you got the convective fuel. But you move out to the, dang, I lost my frame. To my, I'm going to have to do this on the fly, guys, and we can do it. You can tell, I can show you how I do this every time. It's quite easy sometimes. Now, when you have to get very detailed, it's not near as easy. But the western U.S. is pretty quiet today. Not a whole lot going on. Some showers are possible in northern Montana. Some showers are possible in extreme eastern areas of Arizona, too, and then all of New Mexico. You're going to be hoping that it does rain, but the chances, are there. Certainly, I think it's going to happen, but, I don't think it's going to do a ton, but increase the humidity with the intense heat that's already there. And somebody said, at least it's a dry heat yesterday. I saw a comment that says, at least it's a dry heat in Arizona, but I can tell you that this is not as much of a dry heat that we're used to. There's a little bit of a juice to the atmosphere, which does not make it any better with this intense heat in the desert southwest side. We get probably over 110 degrees in Phoenix, over 110 degrees in Las Vegas. Death Valley will reach well over probably 115, 120 degrees a day, even the valleys of California, upper 90s to 100s. So very hot, very, very hot in these regions. Today. You look at temperatures out east, 90s will reach as far north as New York City, areas of Long Island. Just typical summer weather in the southeast. Nothing, above or below average. Very hot in Texas. We already mentioned this. All the way up into Missouri and Kansas. And then we kind of talked about the Southwest already. But, in general, very warm temperatures out west. A little bit below average in certain areas, but especially the northern plains. But in general, heat is on in the Southwest, and this will continue to flex northward. 35-minute video. All right. That's all I got. God bless all y'all. Stay safe out there. Stay cool, and I'll talk to you soon.